Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I welcome you to Hercules and the Space God. We will explore various matters of greatest import to those who are puzzled by and seeking answers to the question, were we visited from outer space? Why were we visited? And what are we still doing here now that we've been visited? I have with me torch bearers. I have Sue, Clarence. Sue, greetings.
Hey, how are ya?
I have Apuleia. Greetings, Apuleia. I have Michael Kopf. I have Paul Dale Roberts.
Right here.
And I have Alan Greenfield.
Hallelujah.
Alan the Great.
Who is an Earth Elemental from the 60s today. And did I get everybody or did I miss anybody?
Well, you missed yourself, but otherwise everybody's mentioned.
No, I said I am Hercules Invictus. I said that earlier.
Oh, usually you skip yourself, so you surprised me.
That's just like Alan. I'm an old thing, an immortal thing, a thing from beyond time. Okay, today we're going to re-explore the question of ancient alien gods or ancient astronauts, as they were known when the theory was born of the mind of Eric von Daniken and the guys who wrote Morning of the Magicians, whose names I don't remember right now. But the theory is that alien astronauts came here and helped develop our species. They helped evolve us from a series of humanoids who was on the planet. And according to Zecharia Sitchin, who based his thoughts on ancient Near Eastern lore, we were created as a race of slaves, mine things like gold for them, which they needed. Now, that doesn't sit well with me. And looking at the Greek mythology, I found that the gods pretty much were a emanation one step closer to source than we were, according to their way of thinking. And they were involved joyful sexual encounters for them, in most cases. And they were also involved in selective breeding. There's a story of Hercules, which talks about how Zeus selectively bred with a line that he created in the hero Perseus. Because Perseus was Hercules' grandfather or great-grandfather. And the reason he was creating like a uber demigod of his line was to help him in the war against the giants, because they needed something that humanity had that the gods didn't have to help them in the war. So Hercules was deliberately created to help them in that war. So we have a purpose, it's a real purpose. They didn't use biochemistry or cloning, they used selective breeding. And in all Greek mythology, the interactions with gods involved breeding or selective breeding, not super science. So according to the Greek way of looking at things that the ancients adopted, some of us, not all of us, some of us have a purpose. We're created for a particular reason. And I like that better than being a person in an asylum or prison or leftover from a gold mining company that's now out of business. So I wanted to know how you guys felt about it and if you had any insights to offer. And we'll start with the Earth Elemental, or Deva as they're often called, Alan Greenfield. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think one of the interesting things that probably those of us who prefer terms like mythic rather than mythology or fairy tales or anything is that in most traditions, not all, but most traditions, including the Greek, the gods were not the ultimate beings back in the day. Right. They are the children of the Titans who they overthrew, or at least Zeus overthrew. And in turn, the Titans were had predecessors as well. And Hercules, as you point out often, the Greeks, at least the classical Greeks, also owned up to the existence of the mysterious deity with no name. And I think that sort of covers what all mystical systems say about the emanation nature of the universe. different, interpretations, but basically that is the case. Once you have the gods as uh, uh, Zeus and Apollo and Poseidon uh, and Hades, etc., they do, according to the Greek tradition and according to most, possibly not including the Norse, I'm not sure, uh, do indeed have uh, sexual interactions with humans in order to create champions of the human race. That's where later concepts like Christos, Christ, Messiah come along. In other words, there are beings who are demigods. There are beings who are greater than ordinary humans, but lesser than the gods. Sometimes they're referred to as half gods. And I think that is a memory of a genuine period in earthly history that sort of dovetails in with theorists like Graham Hancock and Zechariah Sitchin. I should mention my friend Rabbi Yonah Ibn Aaron. He was part of the same circle. I called them the New York Circle, although I'm down here in Atlanta. But it was centered around the discussion and lecture committee of saucers. That was Jim Mosley's organization around saucer news. And Tim Beckley was a part of that. I was a part of that. Jack Robinson was a part of that. August Roberts was a part of that. And Yonah had, as early as the 1950s, I believe, was publishing partly in Saucer News and partly in a newsletter he and Jack Robinson got out under the very fancy schmancy name, the Consultants Committee on Semitic Philology, which consisted of Yonah and Jack. And their theory, which was well worded, and Yonah was a highly, highly literate person, was that the Hebrew scriptures are mistranslated, and he, Yonah, translated them according to what he called extraterrestrialism. This is long before von Däniken. I mean, to the tune of perhaps 10 years. I suppose that's not long in the greater sweep of history, but definitely before. And my friend Dave Halpern says it's all nonsense, and he is an academic who I've known since he was a teenager, and he was a sort of a part of that circle, although he lived in Philadelphia, and paradoxically at that time was the head of the New Jersey Association of Aerial Phenomena. How he lived in Philadelphia, that's just the way ufology operates. But he called it nonsense, and he is an academic who is highly literate in biblical lore. So biblical lore, to some extent, derives from Babylonian lore, and Babylonian lore derives from Akkad, and Akkad, not to do the whole Bagats, derives from Sumer, and Sumer derives from nobody knows where they came from. So we're talking about very, very ancient legends. And just recently on Facebook, a friend of mine was talking about the biblical, mostly in Genesis, decorum of using the word know, K-N-O-W, for sexual relations. And once you establish that that's decorative term for mating, then you have relation between gods or demigods and people that goes through the Nephilim, fallen angels, and the entire lore of that carries forward into modern Christianity, Judaism, and I think even into Islam, although maybe on the sort of Sufi side of things. So I think there is a memory of very early contact, and I think Hercules is right. It was more often beneficial. That doesn't mean that some human beings didn't bridle, especially in the ruling class of ancient Sumer, uh, at the notion of higher beings meddling in human affairs. So it may be that Sitchin's translation of Sumerian texts is at least partially correct, but it may be sort of grousing. I would hate to think that the congressional record is found, a million years from now, and people think that that is representative of what people thought and felt way back in the 21st century, because clearly it's not. It represents a line of opinion about real events, but a line of opinion. That's my take on it.
Thank you very much, and you've opened the door to several shows I plan for the immediate future. So you've used your prophetic talents to not only answer today's question, but to announce future events of which you knew nothing. Thank you. Now we'll go to Paul. Greetings, Paul.
Hey, greetings there, Hercules. Yeah, this is such an interesting topic. I mean, how I got into it, because as a child, I lived in a haunted house. I got a little bit older, started reading Brad Steiger books, and then I picked up Chariot of the Gods by Eric von Däniken. And when I was reading it, I said, that all makes sense. I mean, I remember at a time I went to my priest and I asked him, I said, is God an extraterrestrial? And the priest looks at me kind of confused and he goes, no, God's not an extraterrestrial. Where did you get that idea from? I said, well, just answer me this, Father. If God comes from the heavens and he wasn't born on earth, that means he's not terrestrial. Wouldn't that make him extraterrestrial? And the priest is looking at me. He lights up a cigarette and he goes, all right. I see your point, but that's just the wrong wording. I go, okay. I mean, that's what I'm looking at. And as I got into understanding about ancient aliens, I learned about the half brothers from Enki and Enlil being Anunnaki, and Enki was the friend of man. He helped create man. And so when Enlil got pissed off at mankind for being rebellious, noisy, multiplying, he wanted to destroy them with a flood. Well, the story almost sounds like God versus Satan, Enlil versus his half-brother Enki. Enki loves mankind. He wants to save them, so he whispers something over to Moses, and then he creates an ark so he can save mankind. And this story is all over the place. It's not just a story from the Bible. It is with 200 different cultures. I mean, there's stories of the flood with Asia, with the Americas, Hawaii, Africa, the story of the flood. And with that many cultures, over 200 talking about the flood, it's got to be somewhat true. And I started looking at different things like Moses talking to the burning bush. Well, as a little kid, I remember going camping with my dad, and he took his car and he had the high beams on, but it was going through a bush, and he was talking to me. I couldn't see him because the light was just so bright going through the bush. To me, I was talking to a burning bush, but it was the headlights of the car going through the bush. So, is that what Moses experienced when he was talking through the burning bush? These bright lights from possibly a UFO? Was maybe the UFO that he thought he was talking to God, which it was probably an extraterrestrial talking through a PA system. Um, why did these extraterrestrials create man? Is basically to have a slave race. They first the Anunnaki was over there digging out the gold and everything, and it was too much for them. So here comes Inky manipulating the DNA of some primate with extraterrestrial DNA. They create this slave race, which is all known as Homo sapiens. And what is this gold used for? All kinds of stuff. I mean, it could be used for components to computers. It can correct the ozone layer if you make it into gold dust. And supposedly that's what they were doing. So it's just everything that Eric von Däniken put in there. Um, it just the whole thing makes sense. It sort of gives you answers because when you read the Bible, it's like, who's God talking to over here? And what is this? This Garden of Eden, Garden of Eden, and you think about it, and you go, wow, that sounds like a testing ground. It's a testing ground because you have Eve and you have Adam, and they have free will, and will they be obedient? It's like a testing ground for their creation, Adam and Eve. Don't eat from the tree of life. Leave that apple alone. But there's that temptation and Satan, which is most likely Inky, saying, "Go ahead, you'll get the knowledge of God. Go ahead and take a bite of that apple." The whole thing just makes sense. The cherry of the gods gave me answers, and I embraced it. And to this day, I'm still fascinated with the subject. And you'll see me in front of my TV when Ancient Aliens is on because I'm very committed to try to find the answers, the seeker of truth, and that would be me.
And I have one question for you, so seeker of truth, before you move on. So if the gods from space return and said, "Okay, we're back now. All of you go back to digging gold nuggets out of mountains," would you be jiggy with that?
No, that's too hard to work, especially at my age. That'll break my back.
Yeah, I wouldn't be jiggy with it either. In fact, part of the reason why I don't say I'm a theosophist, even though I adhere to a lot of theosophical viewpoints, I find that they're functional and they my questions to the best of my understanding. It's because people who serve the ascended masters or the gods are called chelas. And the word chela means slave. And this isn't just a mistranslation because the ascended ones are called masters. So that whole way doesn't sit well with me. So when people ask me, I'll say I'm a neo-theosophist, or I adhere to some theosophical tenets, but I'm not a theosophist. So you're not jiggy with it either. Good, we're on the same page there. Sue,
And Hercules also too, like with Satan, who took 1/3 of the angels and they rebelled against God. I mean, still that sounds like Enlil and Inky. So the stories are so similar.
we have that in Greek too, with the Thalion and Pyrrha. The human race was getting too noisy, and Prometheus had given them fire and all this other stuff. And Zeus was mad, so he flooded the earth and drowned everybody except for Deucalion and Theta and their families. So they repopulated the planet by throwing stones behind their back, and the stones became the new race of humanity. The earlier race had been created with mud and the blood of titans. So we're the stone people. But essentially, it's the same myth. And Prometheus was punished by being tied to a stone, and a vulture or an eagle or a griffin, depending on who you read, would eat his liver all day long and then fly away, and the liver would grow back painfully. But when the eagle was away, then the eagle would come back and do the same thing over and over and over again. So he was punished for creating humanity and for making them do all the things that the gods objected.
And also too with that my burning bush idea. Also too, I had a friend who was on a date and he parked the car so he could have some alone time with his date. And all of a sudden, he saw these lights from the bush, and it says "Step out of your vehicle." He thought it was he thought it was God, but it was a police officer. So.
Hey, you're, we got Sue. Sue, I'm dying to hear your thoughts. Sue?
Yeah. Hi. Well, from what I understand, in the beginning, we were actually spiritual beings, very similar to just light. A lot of light, a lot of energy, and we were just around Earth, and a whole bunch of us were rounded up. I don't know uh, too much of what the rest of the planet looked like, but it was sectioned off, and it was kind of indicated like through the movie, like the Truman Show or the TV show Dome. We were actually sectioned off on the actual whole of Earth, and we've been experimented on. Um, so in the beginning, we were just spiritual beings, and I kind of agree the whole thing that we were tampered with. We had resources and races between the Anunnakis and draconian type races. They kind of flew by our planet and was like, hello, what's all this? And they wanted us for our light, our spiritual side. We had something called a soul, which is something that they didn't understand. They tinkered with us, they messed with us in a laboratory. Um, they put us through quite a lot to figure out how to make us more solid, more malleable, more controllable, and so they took away our outer shell of light, if you will, and they basically put us in a body so that they somehow put a body within us. We were a little probably closer to like the glowing people like you've seen in the movie Cocoon. And there was an episode on Star Trek, The Next Generation. I forgot what it was called, but it actually talked about how we are had our memories taken away, and this one being ended up in a crash, and he forgot who he was, forgot why he was there, what his abilities were, but as time went on, he remembered, and eventually he kind of revert back to his old self from a solid body to a body of light. And basically, that's roughly what we were back then. We were spiritual beings. We had psychic abilities. We had all kinds of other abilities, and we were very much tricked and taken advantage of. And the whole thing about the gods and stuff, I believe that all coincides with what happened. There was beings out there that were benevolent, that were trying to give us our freedom back. Now, we were more of the crystalline and carbon based type beings, and that's why over time they kept taking our carbon away. If you notice, they're doing this carbon footprint thing. The big trees got chopped down and everything, and even now they're telling us we need to reduce our carbon. What do you think carbon was for? Carbon's actually good for us. Carbon was actually good for this planet. And the gold and everything else, we were mined for that. And they had all of this technology. not only between the Anunnaki, but we also had reptilian race. We had all kinds of races that basically had the attitude of, let us try, let's tinker with the human race, let's tinker with the genetics, let's see what we can do with them, let's see what makes them tick. They ran us through all kinds of laboratories for a long time. And when they kind of perfected us enough, but the problem is we all had our own attitudes, we had our own beliefs. We rebelled. We weren't very good at being slaves because we can be slaves for a while, but then we end up rising up. And you've seen stories over time and time again of us rising up and trying to get our freedom back. They didn't like that. And you can see the attitude actually was finally written in the Georgia Guidestones because our species eventually bloomed up to into the billions. They didn't like that either. So that's why they put in the Georgia Guidestones they wanted our race to be no more than 500 million. So our species have had dealt with a lot of slavery, not only to each other, but we were taught this whole slavery thing. That was actually a new thing. We didn't have that on our planet to begin with. We didn't have this slavery. We lived with a certain empowerment within ourselves, and that was just weird to them. And so they wanted to find a way to harness that. Not only that, they noticed that we had a soul, which is something they don't have. That was a complete enigma to them. And to this day, you can see with the AI and stuff, they have been trying to find a way to imprint some sort of a soul into some sort of machine, or they're trying to anyway. That's why they're trying to use all kinds of artificials. That they're more familiar with that. You see throughout the Bible that mankind has been trying very hard to communicate what was once there. And we can see ourselves slowly coming back, a pendulum swinging the other way. A lot of the people have reported that even their own blood in their systems in their body is starting to crystalline again, which is what we used to have a long time ago. Uh, Now the history is kind of a mess, but I know that we had a lot of beings throughout the year that were extraterrestrial that tried to help put things back on track for us. They were benevolent and they tried to teach us how things actually work, and they would get us skewed, I guess, by the bad guys, bad actor, uh, malevolent aliens and beings and so forth. Whether we saw them as gods or not, absolutely. I mean, why not? They all had powers and abilities that were considered amazing us, but we had those abilities too at one point, and they stripped that away and they put us inside of a body and they limited us. And you can see in our society, what's the one favorite thing they like to do? Limit. They love limiting us as much as they possibly can, take as much of our autonomy as they can. That's their favorite thing to do. So this is all within our government. If you look at the energy pyramid, who's on the top? We don't even know. We're not allowed to know who's at the tippity top. But I suspect between what we know as gods, what we know as different ETs or alien races that have the power and the capability of manipulating. Now, we talked about before in the past about the Stargates, and that's what they used to actually distribute the slaves, just like the TV show and the movie talked about. They did distribute slaves and people once they made them for mining resources in other parts of Earth, as well as maybe other parts of different planets. Um, I actually believe that we were once a spiritual being that had abilities and powers, and we were slaved. And I believe that at some point we are trying to take the world back, but we have to get through all the crazy misinformation. That's why we are actually in, which is called the spiritual and mind war, which is what we are in now, and to get to the truth of who we exactly are. And it's a lot of waiting to do because they have done whatever they could to muddy the waters.
Wow, that is a very complex, Gnostic, almost cosmological viewpoint. I've heard bits and pieces of it elsewhere, but I've never heard it synthesized the way you put it together. Where is this knowledge coming from?
I learned through the years. I've also learned through observation. I also meditate a lot, which is why I'm a meditation specialist, but I also meditate a lot. I get downloads. I talk to God a lot. And I talk to God and said, and I ask him questions all the time. Where did we come from? How did this happen? What are we doing here? Where's this whole slave thing came from? what did we look like, in the beginning? I ask all these questions. I mean, the first thing everybody asks, why are we here? What are we doing here? And here's the thing, this whole slavery thing is still alive. They're just hiding a lot of it.
Well, thank you very much for introducing us to all this. And I have so many questions that we'll have to
Yeah.
change for another show when we just focus on you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Apuleia, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I have many thoughts. Well, the first thing is, I was expecting the discussion to be a little different, but that's okay. I can figure out what I want to say. I've never actually been that interested in how we got here, who made us, or anything like that. I was more interested in finding out how to reach guidance from above. And that would eventually open up other doors and perhaps answer a question like that. I thought it would be just too mind-blowing to understand. We wouldn't be able to understand how the creation came about. That's a feeling I had, and I think it would drive some people crazy, or it just wouldn't work for most people to approach it that way. I know a little bit about uh, some creation stories. The Egyptian one, there was a primordial darkness, and from it, Atun, the creator god, if Setna were here, he'd correct me probably, but this creator god called forth the Benben, which had all the ingredients, you could say, and then created different gods from that. In Sanskrit, in Hinduism, I took a course learning how a bit about Sanskrit in order to be able to chant mantra. And during the course of that, we would discuss different ideas, different stories, different folklores. And it seemed that the general consensus was, first, the ancient yogis intuited the sound of the universe, the sound of Om, the sound of creation. And from that, they brought forth the knowledge that we have today. That was my impression. I knew something of Tim, not as well as Alan. I knew him when I was a teenager, and then later on towards the end of his life, and we had many discussions. He was my go-to UFO person. If I had a question about UFOs, I would go to him. And I knew that he thought, well, I also believe there is, extraterrestrial life. I'm not doubting that at all. So I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say. But Tim would always say, they think we're ants. That's it. They think we're ants. So I thought, well, he has had experience. He knows a lot of people. Okay, that's his view. I don't know if that's true. I don't believe. I believe that the races out there are some that are very positive and some that are not. The other thing, I've had experiences, so a lot of it had to do with me wanting to understand the experiences I had. But as to creation, I don't know. Madame Blavatsky had something similar. There's a way of finding out. You can climb the tree of life and meditate on the Sephirah. I think that's in Judaism, at least Kabbalah. And that will be revealed to you as you climb the tree. That was Israel Regardie's Garden of the Pomegranates goes into that. Madame Blavatsky, the Theosophists I knew, they were talking about the rays. There's different rays that you can meditate on and climb through, I suppose. So for me, it was trying to find a teacher who knew the answers to these things. I am yet to find that person. But maybe I learn a little bit every day in a different way that works for me. And I believe in using spiritual energies, understanding them, feeling them. And that's the best I could say, but I've never, ever really wanted to delve into the origins. As long as I know that there is a spiritual reality, there is something, gods, angels, whatever they may be, these intelligences that are above us. I want to learn how to work with that. And that's how I think of the connection, not where we came from. We are not slaves now. If we were once, well, that's one thing, but we are not now. But I know that there are forces in play today that want to pull us back, this perhaps back to slavery or from slavery. I know I listen sometimes to Catherine Austin Fitts, that some of you here may be familiar with. She writes for Forbes magazine, a former assistant secretary of HUD. She's often interviewed by Daniel List, and she's actually implied that there is a higher force that guides some of the ruling elite of the world today, but she didn't go further into it. So who knows if she is talking the, if she really has this extra knowledge. She claimed in one, she implied that she was warned not to talk about certain things that she had discovered in the financial world. So I know there's something. I'm going to walk the right path, and maybe I'll get an answer from someone like Alan. Alan knows everything. And that's my thought on this for the moment.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for being very honest with your perception and your perspective. Now, last but not least, to go to Michael.
Well, thank you again, Hercules, for inviting me back. And this is such an interesting topic because I started to think about, you know, when I was younger, we have the knowledge of, we look at something in the sky and we go, hey, there's an unidentified flying object. Well, in the ancient times, we don't know that they would say, oh, there's an unidentified flying object, because we don't know that they would understand the notion of flying. So when they say chariots are in the sky,
Mhm.
I sit there and I go, okay, so they see a vehicle in the sky. That's a UFO. Because they would not, they're talking in terms of their language to relate to everyone. And so, I mean, when we look at a lot of the language that's used in the ancient texts, we're looking at it through modern eyes. We need to look at it through ancient eyes because, they're talking through their knowledge base. We're reading it through our knowledge base. So I think that's where a lot of translations get messed up as well, because there's oh, we now understand this means this. Well, but that's now. We got to go back and think then. And so in all the stories, when we hear of, objects flying through the sky on fire, well, that could be engines, on the back of a UFO, or it could be the result of a battle, and a ship is on fire, literally about to crash or explode, and they saw it. And so that's, one thing that I like to look at. And what I find interesting as well is every time in our history we reach a point to where we're going to make a major breakthrough, something knocks us back. Look at the Tower of Babel story. We were reaching the heavens. The tower's destroyed. We're created now in 4 regions, different languages. We can no longer communicate together. They divided us. Then we go into other advances, and we're divided again. And so one of the most interesting aspects, and I'm sure some of you who are more familiar with religion will correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Bible, the very beginning of the Bible, it says we are all the children of God. We are all made in his image. Well, that raises an interesting point when they say God is a male, because wait, then what about the women? Because they're made in his image, so therefore God is a woman. But then we're made in his image, so God is a man. So it's like, wait a minute. Who is this God that created us that can look male and female? Well, that's, something to think about. But then when patriarchy took over the church from the matriarchal beginning, all of a suddenly mankind is second. We gave up our divinity. And I personally, when I read that and somebody's, says you're not the child of God, Jesus is, and you're second to Jesus, I said, I never gave up my divinity. So, you don't have the right to take it away from me. No. I know when I was created, I was a child of God. I never said, nope, I relinquished my birthright, I relinquished my title. And so there's little nuances in all the stories that points to our having a much different origin than we're told. And I can't help but think, were we created as a slave race? Maybe. Because where did we get the idea of a slave system? But I look at the earth differently than a lot of people. To me, the earth is a proving ground. It's like a school. And so other races, other beings come here to learn because they no longer are in our environment that we created. And so they're like, hey, how do we learn how to do that, what they're doing? Well, you got to be born into the system. Well, the problem being born into a system, you forget when you're born into it how to get out of it. So we get stuck and we go through this everlasting, never ending reincarnation cycles until we finally reach that point where we go, wait a minute, I have done this maybe 100,000 times. Enough is enough. I know what I need to know. I figured it out. And we can go back from where we came from. That's why I feel like, certain people, when you say, where's home? They'll point to the stars. They're, some people call them hybrids, star seeds. But we're starting to regain awareness of our galactic origin, not our terrestrial origin. And we're realizing, we have more than 2 strands of DNA. I'm sorry. As complex as we are, I cannot buy the scientific term junk DNA in us. I don't see our creators going, okay, we got all this fine-tuned, the body's working perfectly. Oh, we got these extra strands. Let's just dump them in there. They'll never find them anyway. I feel like they are a purpose. And so what happens is we had them turned off when we were born, when we were created, so to speak. So now we're figuring out how to turn them back on, and we're gaining awareness, and that's why we're questioning, where are we coming from? And when we talk about the gods, I can't help but, as we talk about, like, the Garden of Eden, they tell us Adam and Eve were the only 2 humans in existence. They have 2 sons. What happens to those sons? They marry women from other tribes. Wait a minute. You said there was only 2 people on the planet. They had 2 kids. That makes 4. How do we have other tribes all of a sudden? And so that's where I feel like the ancient aliens theories and the Anunnaki and everything takes foothold is because it's starting to answer those little nuances that nobody paid attention to and going, wait, if there are other tribes, then there's other races and other people here. Wait a minute. Something's not right. Maybe we are looking at this totally different, and maybe the Garden of Eden was Earth, and the other tribes are extraterrestrials that came and mixed in with the people on Earth. And so there's a lot of different angles and different ways to interpret these stories. And so our purpose, I feel like why we're here is to learn who we are and who we were meant to be when we arrived here, where we truly came from, not, what is the future of our planet? How are we going to keep this planet alive? I'm sorry. I was noticing in 2020 when nobody could travel, the Earth really started cleaning itself up really well. So she doesn't need us to caretake her. She doesn't need us to keep her alive. She can do it all by herself. So we're just borrowing space here to learn. And so that's kind of my long-winded view of why we're here, is basically to remember where we came from and how to get back.
Very good, Michael. Very Gnostic. Are you familiar with the Gnostic writings?
I am.
Okay, so very Gnostic. I run something I have since I was a teenager. Sometimes it's public and sometimes it's private. It's called the Olympian Starseed Edition, and it operates on a lot of the things that you expressed believing in. So one day we'll have a conversation.
Look forward to it.
I agree with Michael. That's once we got the body, that's how all of it, started running.
And also too with Michael, what he was talking about, ancient language and modern language. This is so true because they're trying to ancient language. They're trying to describe what they're seeing, chariots in the sky and all that other stuff. And also too, when Michael was saying, a lot of answers pop up with this ancient alien theory, like the missing link. Well, why is it missing? Well, it's because extraterrestrials stepped in, manipulated our DNA, and created Homo sapiens. And that's the reason why there's a missing link, because extraterrestrials got involved. And then sometimes I hear people going, well, how come, if they're out there, how come they just don't land on the White House lawn and introduce themselves? Well, 1952, there was UFOs all over the White House, but no one really talks about that, and possibly there's a zoo hypothesis or the dark forest theory in which aliens don't want to get involved with us. With the zoo hypothesis, they want us to evolve. They want to watch us evolve. They're like watchers, they're observers. And the dark forest theory is that maybe we shouldn't be out there trying to make contact because there might be an alien race out there that's very hostile and it's going to wipe us out. So we got to be kind of careful.
And this show is called the UFO Entity Enigma. So we will be discussing these questions endlessly from one perspective to another perspective and see if it shed light on some darkness. Yeah. You have something to say, Apuleia?
Yeah, my finger keeps disappearing there. I wanted to say, just add something to what Michael said at the beginning of his talk about how we should be looking at the ideas of the time of the writing and not in modern concepts of things. And I can give you an example of something that fits right in. The US Constitution, I had this discussion with people. I work in the law, and sometimes we talk about things. The Constitution is written in the language of the 18th century. and expresses the ideas of the 18th century. So one person was reading it, and there was these strange grammatical writing that didn't make sense to them. So we explained that's why, because that was the grammar. It's a grammatical thing that was done in the 18th century. But further, so the next question came, why don't they write it in modern language? Well, that's what you don't want to do, because you want to preserve that language of that time with that understanding, and then have someone who studies it, and then have a commentary on it like we have in the Bible or the Torah, and have an amendment to it, or you have different scholars or the Supreme Court that understands the interpretations as best they can be. So that's a good example of how you preserve an idea from another time.
Right, and to piggyback on that a little bit, Apuleia, I saw a comic strip that outlaid exactly what you're saying when they said the founding fathers are in this room and they have fans and they go, man, we should have the right to bear arms. And we interpret it as arming ourselves up. They were interpreting it as short sleeve shirts.
I love that
Sweltering
joke.
hot in there.
That's
And
funny.
Yeah.
so it's like, it is funny how our language, we have so many words that look and are very similar, but are spelled differently, have different meanings,
Right.
and people don't understand. It's like if I was to say to someone today, oh, you have the right to bear arms, they're going to be like, yeah, I wear short sleeves all the time. And you're like, no, I mean, you have the right to arm yourself. Oh, that's what that means. It's like, yeah, the language gets lost.
Yeah. Or the word gay. Once it just meant being happy and lively, and now it has another meaning. So things change, language evolves.
That note, we start
What's
wrapping up.
the other meaning?
So, Alan, how can people contact you and enter your world?
Wow. Well, I do have a new book out called Flying Saucers and the Occult. It's the shortest book I've ever written, but between the covers, you can read it in one sitting. You will be much closer to enlightenment. Most people, some of you may already be far beyond my four powers to add or detract, but it is a very enlightening book. It's a distillation, short and sweet, of the work of more than half a century that I've done, and more to come. Also, all of my books are available on Amazon, and most of them are also available on Barnes and Noble and other online repositories of great wisdom, and my books.
And Alan has a show coming out in the very near future on this channel. So you'll be an Olympian speaking with the voice of the gods. He is one already, but he'll be an official one at that.
Can I just say one thing about the sweep of conversation here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Be very, very careful about things read in translation. Modern languages have their euphemisms. A giant sale doesn't mean that someone is selling giants. And yet, when we translate classical terms where you see a word that is translated giant, there's a whole range of things that it might have meant to people in classical and pre-classical times. It might have meant really what we understand to be a giant, but it also may have meant outstanding or something that we have lost. 99% of known texts from the ancient world that are lost. That is, we know them from references in the 1% that have survived. But 99% of those that are referred to, we have no access to at all. And that should tell us something. I think we can do a program on the interpretation that Sitchin and my friend Yona and others have done. But even then, it doesn't matter how literate one is in ancient languages, we don't get the euphemisms that they used then. We don't even know. Some of them are obvious to modern readers, but some are probably lost in the jargon of the time. Look at how English has changed in your own lifetimes, and you'll understand why it needs to be cautious. As I often quote, and if anybody knows who this quote is, I think it's Robert Graves, but if someone knows, please tell me. It goes, all translation is a lie. Some good translations are a polite lie, but they're still a lie.
That sounds very wise and profound. Unfortunately, I don't know who said it, but thank you, Alan.
Can I make a quick addition to that?
Very quick. We need to wrap up.
One thing, too, we need to look at is how many dialects are there in America right now? And so we have to understand what dialect was this written in. And so that's another thing to look at when looking at translations.
You have a homework assignment for next time. And how can people enter your universe?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me under my name, Michael Kopf. You'll see my picture. I'm also on YouTube and Rumble. And my books are available on Amazon. And you can also catch me when Hercules invites me on his shows.
Thank you very much. Apuleia, how can people enter your world?
I am on Facebook, Carolinda Gonzalez. You can find me. Just message me. If I don't know you, I won't friend you, but if I know you, I will very happily. So I'll be looking for Sue and Michael. I don't think I have. I think I've got you, Paul Dale Roberts. Are you on Facebook?
Yes, I
Yeah,
am.
I think I have you. Yes. And
Well,
Alan Greenfield, I've been looking at for years.
You mean my Facebook, right?
Yes, not
Okay.
you.
Say we have a stalker here.
No, not. It's very flattering when anybody bothers to read my stuff.
Thank you, Apuleia. And Paul, how can people find you and enter your world?
all they have to do is Google or Bing my name, Paul Dale Roberts. You'll find some of my articles. If you want to see my books, Paul Dale Roberts Books. And I just published an ebook, and it's called HPI Investigates Area 51. And it talks about our investigation at Area 51. And it's only $4.
Very cool. And you also have a new show coming up on popular culture.
Yes, I do. It's a Hercules Invictus production, and we're just talking about all kinds of stuff, pulp culture. So it should be a lot of fun.
Modern mythology. And before we get to Sue, I woke up this morning, turned on Facebook, and Facebook had changed my name on Facebook. Instead of Hercules Invictus, it was Hercules the Unconquered.
Ooh.
It stayed that way for most of the time. I didn't do it. Nobody I knew had messed with my Facebook. It was just there for a few hours, then it went back to being Hercules Invictus. So
That was AI.
I thought
AI translation.
Yeah, because that's Invictus is unconquered.
yes, but I thought I was in one of those Mandela effect places for a while. Anyway, last but not least, Sue, how can people enter your universe?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter/X. I'm on Instagram. People can contact me through Facebook Messenger, or the Instagram Messenger, or the Twitter Messenger. let's see. I'm on Substack. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm kind of everywhere on the internet world.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the universe that you opened a window to today, because it sounds phenomenally fascinating. Two more things before we wrap up for the night. One is I posted a few things on torchbearers. We're all torchbearers, as far as I'm concerned. And I've done shows on several of the torchbearers that focus on the torchbearers and their lives and their doings and their adventures and so forth. So I'd like to do a show on everyone I haven't done a show yet on, or if I've done a show on you as an individual already, if you have new things going on, we'll schedule a second show. Because the torchbearer stuff is about you. We're all torchbearers, so let's celebrate our torchbearers. So that's one thing we need to talk about. And then the other thing to talk about is better promoting our works. So many of us publish or have other types of ways of conveying information by talking at conventions or gatherings or locally in various places like the Application Research Foundation and so forth. So we can start focusing on your works and promoting your works more effectively. So if you've written a book, we should be able to schedule something very quickly to focus on the book that you've just written rather than waiting a month or two or three to schedule it. So think about if you'd like to become involved in that, and I'll come up with a system and we'll do it. Any questions before we say goodnight?
Thanks for the privilege of being on, Hercules. I mean that with great sincerity.
My pleasure. You guys are phenomenally awesome. Really phenomenally awesome.
Yes, thank you, Hercules. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Hercules.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Hercules.
My
It-
pleasure.
It makes my night when I get the message, hey, here's the Zoom link for the show tonight. Because I'm like, oh, I'm on. Hercules is bringing me back.
I'm greatly honored.
Yeah, I am.
This will be up by midnight tonight, so I'll post it on my page and I'll tag all of you.
Oh,
Okay,
fantastic. Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
great. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Live
Good night,
long and
everyone.
prosper.
All right, everybody.